Hey, this is Carmen with the New Happy Me, and I'm actually on the New Happy Me radio. It is about to start soon. I have the studio right here on my other screen, and we have about 30 seconds to go before the show starts. So, as soon as it starts, I will get in with our topic for today. It's all about abundance, and I'm sure this is a subject that is. It's a topic that a lot of people are curious about. Oh, 5 seconds. Four, three. Hello, hello. This is Carmen Marie with the New Happy Me Radio, and I'm delighted to be here today on an impromptu episode of the New Happy Me Radio. I love doing these shows. If you've listened to other the New Happy Me Radio shows, you know that I love doing these shows. Actually, I have three dogs at home, and sometimes you'll hear them barking while I'm on the show. I have a home office. This is my office. Actually, if you're listening to this on the radio, you probably don't realize I'm actually recording this show on video as well. So anyone watching the video can actually see me with my hand movements and my smile and everything. So bear with me. So I do have three dogs, and you will hear them barking once in a while when I do the show. And because I will be away in the next few days, took them to be boarded. They go to the hotel. They go to the hotel in the country. They have a blast over there. I just took them there. I came back, so I'm in my sweater and sweatpants, basically, not really dressed up for anything fancy. I'm just doing the radio show from my home office, and so you won't hear any dog barking today, guaranteed. So yeah, so I'm doing the video of the radio show just to kind of give you a feel of who I am. That the person behind the New Happy Me is indeed a real person. When I talk to you about my stories, when I talk to you about things that I have done for myself, and when I encourage you and I inspire you to take action for your own life as well, I'm really talking from a place of simplicity. I'm just like the girl next door, and you can do whatever I have been able to do for myself. So when I put it out there, to motivate you to do something, to change your life around, just, think about that. Think about how if this girl can do it, you can do it too. That's basically my message. So today's theme, I decided to talk about abundance because I realized that the word abundance is a word that has come up a lot in the last year for me, and a bit before also, a bit after I started the New Happy Me. The word abundance was not a word that I was familiar with in my youth or in my young adulthood, let's say. It was not a concept that was familiar to me or my family. My family lived in scarcity, and my parents still have that scarcity mindset, although they are learning a lot from me. Abundance did not exist for them. It did not make sense to believe in any kind of word or concept that meant what abundance means. They were religious individuals, not religious in the sense that they would go to church every week, but they were religious nonetheless, Christians, and so they believed in, or they still believe in, hard work. You do the work that you need to do, you get compensated for the work that you put in, for the effort and the time, and there's a limit. There's a limit to what you will receive, because really now I understand it, because there's only so much time you can put into work, and there's only so much effort you can put into work. So that's finite. It's determined. You can practically predetermine how much you are going to be able to make within a certain period of time, knowing how many hours you can put into this work and how much effort you think you will be able to put into it. It may be from strength, it may be from your talent, whatever it may be, your qualifications and so forth. So basically, you are receiving a limited amount of gift for what you put put out there. There is there is no such thing as more than that. There's no such thing as abundance. So it's not hard to believe that for my parents, it didn't make sense to come up with a word that meant that, because it just didn't exist. You put the work that you need to put in and you get that limited amount of return. Not even a gift, it's a return. It's a fair return for what you receive. And I'll go even further. It wasn't always fair. Because they lived in that scarcity mentality, often they believed that when you were placed in a disadvantaged situation, it was very easy for someone else who was in an advantaged situation to take advantage of you. So the exchange would not necessarily be fair. You would possibly have to put in a lot more work. You would possibly have to put in a lot more effort than the amount of revenue you would be able to make, or the amount of return you would be able to be compensated with. And so that scarcity mentality was very real. Obviously not called scarcity for them because they're not familiar with the concepts of energy at all. They just look at the exchange of time and energy for whatever they would get in return, either goods, services, or money. And so that's what I grew up in. And the way my parents functioned because of this, because of what they believed in, they put a lot of importance in savings, in making sure that money was not spent frivolously, that money was kept and invested very, very wisely and as safely as possible, so that it would be available on rainy days. So that was really how they managed the household. And truly it was my mother who managed the household more than anything else, but my father was minded in pretty much the same way as well. He would just do the amount of work. He was a manual worker, so he would put in a certain amount of time, get a certain amount of money. My mother would be the one managing it more. And it took quite a few years until my parents started getting out a bit. They realized that they were lacking in social activities, especially for their kids. I think they were okay with sacrificing it for themselves, but I think they realized at some point that their kids needed, myself and my brother, we needed to socialize a bit. We needed to get out. We needed to kind of see the world. And so they started spending a bit of money to get some rest, on vacations and so forth, but to go out, little outings to the restaurant or vacations and so forth. So it took that time though, and I think it made sense for my father to just take his time, to not spend the money because he didn't need to spend the money. He was okay being frugal, but he was he was an introvert. He still is an introvert. He doesn't really like being in people, in crowded areas, among people. So he didn't really need to spend money on that. He could eat at home all the time. He didn't need to go to restaurants. He didn't need to go to social events. He didn't like to go to social events. He would just stay home. And it served my mother's purpose because it allowed them to save a lot of money. And so when they bought their first house, they really needed to pay up the mortgage as quickly as possible because it didn't make sense for them to pay interest. And that's just the way they were. We didn't have any allowance money because we didn't need to have any allowance money. They provided us with everything we needed. We didn't need anything more than that. So in the way they brought us up, they really kept that closed environment, that limited environment. You have the amount of money coming in or the lack of money coming in, and so you have to organize yourself and make sure you have enough for whatever you need. But even whatever you need, you have to keep it to a bare minimum. and you will be okay with that. You don't need more, because really the problem is that you have a finite number of hours to produce the work that you need to produce. You have a limited amount of resources and energy to produce the work that you need to produce. So obviously the return will also be limited. That's the mentality that we call scarcity, that I learned to be scarcity in the recent years. I hadn't realized what I had been brought up in. My mom to this day does not understand the concept of abundance, does not understand the concept of scarcity and how she fits into that kind of mindset. And so it took time for me to realize what how my habits had been impacted, or how I created my habits based on what I learned in my childhood. And so I think what happened to me was that I decided very early on that if I kept that limited mindset, which I later learned uh, was the mindset of scarcity. If I kept that limited mindset, I would prevent myself from living. I needed to give in order to receive. And the way it worked was I needed to give money in order to receive the things that would make me happy. It was the wrong way of thinking, obviously, but I kind of switched things around. I didn't want to live in the end result of scarcity mindset. I wanted to live a life that was fuller. I wanted to provide for myself the things that I wanted. I wanted to live and experience life. What really helped me a lot, I have to say, is that I did buy certain things that costed a little more than I needed to spend. I bought a car relatively young. I was able to buy a secondhand car at first, and it served me pretty well for about 3 years. But then I decided that I wanted a Jeep Wrangler. I really put my mind to that. I decided that I really wanted to buy a Jeep Wrangler. And something someone told me kind of put that little seed in my brain, kind of planted that seed. She said, Carmen, if you don't do it now, when do you think you will do it? And that kind of stuck with me, not only for the purchase of the Jeep, but for anything else after that. If you don't do it now, when are you going to do it? And that kind of stuck to me in anything related to experiences. I wanted to experience life. So if I did not do that right then and there, if I didn't spend the money that I needed to spend to have that experience, when would I have the time to do it? When would I be able to do it? When would it be the right time to do it? So that seed planted in my mind just created the next flow of events. I bought the Jeep, and then cellular phones, I'm probably dating myself a little. Cellular phones started becoming a little more popular, so I got myself a cellular phone, which was a little more expensive back then. And I started going out. Although I wasn't the big spender, I started going out. I started spending on clothing and purses and shoes and jackets and so forth. So I started experiencing life the way my mother never experienced it. So I kind of went the other way. Now, what happened was that I had started making money, and I was making a decent amount of money. And I didn't have a lot of responsibilities back then because I wasn't married, I didn't have children, I lived in my parents' home. So I was able to use a lot of that money. Some of it I still invested because I realized I needed to invest some of the money to make sure that I grow. I saw the value in growing my money, so I did invest my money. But a lot of it I also did spend because in my head I wanted to experience. It was my youthful years, I wanted to experience life. So I went from what my mother had been living as an immigrant in Canada, trying to pull her life together with the little resources that she had, feeling that she was limited in what she had available to her because of her situation, and because greedy people would possibly take advantage of her because she was a newcomer in the country, and my father too, obviously. And so that's the mindset that she had. I came out of that and I did the opposite. I said, I am here, I was born here, I have all my rights, I'm making money, I'm going to spend that money, I'm going to experience life, and I'm going to try to be a little smart about it, but I'm not going to prevent myself from living life. However, I still did not know about the concept of abundance. I was still taking what I was earning and I was putting that into my life experiences. I was still in that limited mindset where I knew that I had to work, I had to make a certain amount of money, take that money and use it to spend on whatever I needed to spend on. And so I went the other way. And it was a good thing. I needed to see both and I needed to experience both. I needed to experience life as well to kind of get a feel of what can be available to me, as opposed to staying stuck in the life that my mother had or my parents had molded for me. And so, being on the other end of the spectrum, what ended up happening at one point is that when certain life situations happened where I didn't have enough money coming in, I would slowly start depleting my resources, and I really got myself in trouble, in financial trouble. Not so much. I've never been in incredible financial trouble. I've always had a roof over my head. I've always had enough food to eat. Thank God my mother is around for her to have helped me at some points as well. However, the idea is that I was still stuck in that limited mindset where I was not able to tap into anything else that would expand that limit of of income of energy, of any kind of energy, of income in terms of finances, in terms of love, even in any kind of energy. I wasn't getting more than I expected to get. I had this kind of bubble around me where that was the extent to which I expected to receive, and I was spending a certain amount when I started receiving less than what ended up happening is that I was spending more than what I was receiving. And same thing, I mentioned love as an energy. It's the same thing there. You know, when at one point I receive a lot of love, I receive a lot of attention, and then for whatever reason, let's say I'm talking about a relationship, the relationship ends for some reason, I'm depleted of that energy, and I have this expectation that it's going to come from outside of me. So now that it's broken, the link is broken, that I'm not getting anything from the outside. Now my energy is depleting because I've set up myself in that scarcity mentality to have this bucket for myself where I am filling it in from outside sources and from resources that I have in finite quantity. And when I lose that potential, then my bucket doesn't fill up anymore. So, I'm stuck. And that's what was happening. And like I said, in all kinds of energies, including money and love. And so in scarcity mentality, you have this expectation that you put out a certain amount of effort or time or whatever it is, that you're putting out some energy and you're expecting that energy back, and you are refueling yourself from the external energy. And you have that finite quantity and quality available to you that is immediately linked to how much you have to offer. You cannot get more than what you have to offer. Basically, that's it. So it's a finite, limited amount, and you're stuck there. Let me just grab a quick sip of water. So that's where I was, and so I got married. And again, in marriage, we have the flow of energy of giving and receiving money and love. And so being stuck in that kind of mindset, I was limiting myself again, and my expectations were becoming higher and higher, but I wasn't able to provide more because I didn't know how to provide more, and I wasn't receiving more because I didn't know that I could receive more. Um, and there was a conflict that was starting to create, that was creating there, that I was creating, because you want, as a human being, you are supposed to continuously expand. You're supposed to continuously grow. And when you're stuck in that scarcity mentality, you do not grow. You stay stuck. And that gets you in a lot of trouble. You're stuck in that mentality where you have a finite amount of energy to put out there. And so you when you start expecting more to come back to you, there's a clash in the concepts, because you can't, according to what you believe, you can't expect to receive more, because what you receive is supposed to equal what you give out. And so it doesn't make sense anymore. And given your mentality, given your beliefs, you can't move forward. Things just don't make sense. And so it's very normal at that point to feel completely stuck, to not know where to go, because the concept that you are living with does not allow you to see things any differently. And that's where I was. That's where I was in my marriage. Financially, things were stuck. In love, things were stuck. And I was really unhappy. On the outside, things looked pretty normal. And that's another danger, because in society, normal is basically numb. People live in their routine, they go to work, they come back home. Things happen behind closed doors that a lot of people aren't even aware of. And even the people living through those circumstances are numb about the things that are happening behind closed doors, like I was. And we just live life in complete numbness, not really realizing that there is something better out there. So, what saved me actually was that before getting married, I had tapped into some of that abundance without really knowing what it was. I had gotten away from my mother's and my parents. I use my mother more because she was my biggest influence, but I used that mentality of scarcity. I got out of that mentality of scarcity, and I went on the opposite way. I decided to have those experiences. I decided to take my energy and put it out there and expect something in return. So I kind of tasted that. And it's quite ironic, actually, when I was in college and I decided to go work full time when my father got very sick. He had cancer, and although he came out of it very well, at that point we weren't really sure. He got emergency surgery, and we weren't really sure that he was going to make it. And he took me aside at one point. We were at the hospital, and he said, "Carmen, I really need you to start working, because you really need to help your mother support the family." And I don't know if I ever told my mother that, but I kind of felt that responsibility, and I started working. I was already in a very big company in Montreal. I had my foot in. I had small contracts over the summer between sessions. And so I decided to call them up and say, I'm ready to take on a full-time position, contractual or permanent, whichever you're ready to offer me. And so they gave me contracts. They gave me full-time contracts, and I continued going to college while I was working full-time, doing both full-time. It was really hell at that point. No social life left for me. However, that was my decision. And my mother's reaction to that was, "You now tasted money. There is no going back." And she thought I was going to drop college altogether and start working to make money and taste. And I had the taste of money. I would be able to taste those experiences, and I would never turn back. And it's funny that she said that, because it's true. And I'm glad I did that because it allowed me to taste the experiences that that energy would allow me to acquire, to tap into. It wasn't the right way of doing it back then, but at least it allowed me to get a taste of it. That there is something out there that I deserve. I do not need to limit myself to this circle of stuckness where I don't have enough to have my experiences, where I can't have enough to have my experiences, where I'm really limiting myself to the time and the effort that I can put into my work. And sometimes fairly, sometimes unfairly, get a return that is so limited that I cannot really have the experiences that I desire for myself. And so, having tasted that early on in my early adulthood, I decided that now, being stuck in the situation that I was in, I decided that I did deserve to have access to those experiences once again. There was no reason for me to stay stuck. There was something out there that I wanted to tap into. I had a taste of it, but I didn't know exactly what it was all about. But I really wanted to experience it. So that was a decision then and there that I would tap into whatever it was out there in that life that I deserved, that better life that I deserved, and I would no longer stay stuck. It was a decision. And like I say, in a lot of the conversations that I have with you, whether it's on the show, on webinars, on Hangouts, it's all about a decision. It's about a decision that this situation is no longer acceptable, that I do want to change it, that I am going to do whatever it takes to move forward from here. So, number one, the decision. Number two, the belief. You have to believe that there is something out there. Even if you don't know that it's called abundance yet, I did believe that there was something there because I had tasted it, which helped me. But even if you look outside of you, outside of your own circumstances, you see abundance everywhere. How are those people doing it, and why do they deserve it and not you? You have to believe that you deserve it just as much as they do, right? That was number two. I had to believe that I can tap into it. Number three was the intention. What is it that I want to tap into? What's my intention? What do I want to get? And even if I don't go into something material, something specific, I can go into the emotions behind it. How do I want to feel? I want to feel good about myself. I want to feel like I can access whatever I want to access when I want to access it. And that was the intention. Now don't forget, at this point in my life, I still don't know about abundance. I have no clue what it is. But I know that there is something out there that will make me feel so much better about myself, feel that I deserve it, that I can have access to it, that I can have what I want when I want it. And that's what abundance is all about when you think about it. And then, after setting the intention, it was really about setting it in motion. Really tapping into that universe of abundance. And that's something that I had to learn. It took me more time to learn that. So after I set the intention, it was to surrender to it. Allow it to come. Knowing that there's something out there and being open to whatever I can receive to tap into that abundance. And the one word I will give to you here is opportunity. There are opportunities around us all the time, but it is up to us to be aware of them and to recognize those opportunities as the doors that unlock the abundance that is available to us. That awareness makes a very, very big difference, and it's all in the opportunities. And why I'm using the word opportunity, and why I used all this story to get to the point where I'm explaining abundance to you, basically the reason why I came all this way is because I'm now working on a project that's called Blog to Heal. And Blog to Heal is a project that is very, very close to my heart. It is an initiative that I took on myself without really knowing what I was doing at the very